Buenas and Mananas Itu'us colleagues. We're back from recess. We are on the second reading. We are now on bill number 85-36, so I call on Senator Joseph Augustine.
Thank you, Madam, and good morning, Madam Speaker, and to my colleagues. I move to accept the substitute Bill 85-36 COR, which is an act to amend Section 15301 of Article 3 and Section 15407, both of Article 4, Chapter 15, Title 4, Guam Code Annotated, relative to reaffirming the independence of the Guam Ethics Commission as amended by the Committee on General Government Appropriation and Housing, and introduced by myself.
Senator, could you clarify? There is an uploaded substitute version, but you just
Yes,
talked
there
about
is.
the amended. Oh,
Yes, there is an uploaded already substitute version, ma'am.
so are you moving that the substitute version?
Yes, replace the bill.
Okay, so on the motion to accept the substitute version of Bill 85-36 COR, it's uploaded on the drive. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, motion carries. We're now on substitute Bill number 85-36 COR. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place the substitute version in the third reading file for the purpose of discussion.
Please proceed.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to my colleagues and the people of Guam. Thank you for accepting the substitute version, which was proffered after the committee received the minor technical amendments made in the legal review. The changes made were all technical in nature to ensure compliance with the rules on format and style. 2 years ago, the Guam Ethics Commission was reactivated by Executive Order 2019-06, years after establishment with Public Law 23-105. Over these 2 years, we've heard from the Commission on what they needed to ensure they are able to fulfill their mandates. And so in fiscal year 2021, we made an appropriation to assist them stand up the Commission. The Commission recognized the need for full autonomy to ensure there were no conflicts to their authority to receive complaints, conduct investigation, and enter judgments free from any potential influence or interference by government officials. In line with this, we request that the law be strengthened to include an executive director who will be responsible for administering Guam laws and Commission policies in compliance when conducting investigation and other hearings on complaints filed. This is a step towards providing them with the tools necessary to fulfill their mandates. I appreciate the discussion on the bill and look forward to the support of my colleagues in passing this measure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Situus Masi, Zen Manana Situus, Speaker and colleagues, I stand in full support of Bill number 85-36 COR, and as this bill intends to reaffirm the need for the Guam Ethics Commission as an independent body that can adequately receive, hear, and render opinions on allegations of violations. I believe, this need is necessary to maintain a standard of conduct in the government of Guam. So, Madam Speaker, I rise in full support of this measure, and I thank the good author for introducing this legislation. Situus Masi.
Situus Masi. Any other senator would like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Dueñas, you are recognized.
Situus Masi, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, and good morning. So during the public hearing on Bill 85-36, it was quite a interesting and lively exchange between members of the legislature and the executive director. First of all, one of the things that was discussed at length was a provision basically to kind of, I know we use this term a lot on this floor, lockbox the funding and the funding mechanism fundamentally to secure the autonomy of the Ethics Commission, which currently has the board members selected by the governor, or at least appointed, confirmed by this body. So the funding was a discussion, and many of us thought, we understand the very nature and what a properly running, functioning ethics commission could bring to allowing for cases to be brought, information to be brought, whereby the integrity of the government in Guam is maintained, and maybe even these potential ethics violations are adjudicated, if you will, by this body. And maybe that funding is important, but is it more important than education? Is it more important than public safety? Is it more important than so many other things we do in the government? So we'll leave that to what the body decides, if it debates that, contemplation in the measure. But what I kind of wanted to ask the author of the legislation, because this came up as a major point too during the back and forth with the executive director. And Madam Chair, you've even discussed this with regard to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and the current issues there with regard to autonomy. What power does that board have? Right? What power do they have in terms of the executive director? Is that influenced by those who serve at the pleasure of the governor? So, trying to understand the full encompassing intent of this legislation, Madam Chair, I would like to proffer a question to the chair for the author. As discussed in the bill, in terms of the autonomy, the integrity of the commission, does this bill basically also contain the idea that it is only the board, that the executive director serves only at the pleasure of the board and has no influence with regard to the chief executive in terms of how the author has sort of written into this legislation the autonomy, the need to make sure that's all built in? Is that the belief of the author, and does this bill strengthen that process? I pose that to the author, Madam Chair.
You would like for him to
I would like him to yield.
would the sponsor yield to the question? The minority leader?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I just want to try to understand what his question was, because I need to remind our colleague that there is another bill that, after this bill, that was introduced by one of our colleagues, that would change the commission from appointed to elected body. And that I have no problem with. I'm actually in support of that, because then it will actually strengthen this. This bill today only talks about the executive director. And right now the executive director is appointed by the commission. And so I'm just trying to understand really what was the question?
Well, in the challenge, Madam Chair, which I agree with in terms of not having hard copies in front of us. Let me just go to the reason why I posed the question in terms of the line and the underlined version of what the bill. So in the section there is on line 4, it says an independent and autonomous commission. Obviously, it's underlined because that was the emphasis of what the bill is attempting to do. Because, Madam Chair, I'm in agreement if that's the strength that we're trying to put. We have an ethics commission. We have an executive director. We have a board who has put that executive director in place. We imagine that maybe the board probably wanted to fulfill the wishes of the governor to have, that particular chair, right? But even in my exchange, and it should be in the committee report, Madam Chair, with the executive director, that was his opinion that he already had that. He talked about a Chinese wall that exists, that should exist, and he believes does exist between the board and himself and the governor. So my simple question to the mover of the motion and this bill is that the core intent of this legislation, to codify that stronger, that's what the belief of this body is, that there should be no influence in terms of how the executive director who carries out the day-to-day operations for this ethics commission is supposed to be, that there is no influence because of the autonomous nature under which this ethics commission, which will be dealing with complaints brought primarily against either executives or employees or whatever ethical violation that is believed to have occurred within our government. So it's a straightforward question. And I thank the author for saying that he's appreciative of a measure my colleague, Senator Moylan, has introduced to possibly make this commission elected.
Senators, we're out of order to be talking about other measures, please.
Well, the author brought it up, Madam Chair.
I understand it. I will.
Okay, so I guess you've ruled us both out of order. But to the mover, is that the intention of this bill? I want to know more. To strengthen and once and for all say the autonomy of this ethics commission, the board, and choosing its executive director, and the duties are strengthened by this bill.
Are you asking the senator to yield?
Yes, I am.
Senator, would you yield to the question?
Yes, I will. To my colleague and to my colleague that posed the question, yes. We'd like to find a way, and if this is one step towards that. And then we just keep moving one step at a time so that we don't stumble over ourselves.
So, Madam Chair, I then say that I'm encouraged and I'm inclined to support the measure because this body does speak on the measures it introduces, the language that it puts into legislation, and the autonomy that we believe that should be held and maintained, particularly in bodies of government created by this legislature, its management and the like, to truly be autonomous when holding our government to a high standard. I mean, it's ethics that we're talking about, correct? It's the purported emphasis behind this bill. Because we're not creating the Ethics Commission, they already exist. We're not creating the board, we're not creating a directorship position, we've done that. So that the public understands and that we understand on the floor here what we're voting on, that was the purpose of my question and my continued intrigue. Because as the executive director said on the record during the public hearing, he already believes it's there. He doesn't believe that he serves at the pleasure of the governor. He believes he serves at the pleasure of that board, and if that board evaluates his performance and decides you're not cutting the mustard, you're gone. Or if you're doing a great job, maybe you'll get a raise. So I think it's important for the people of Guam to understand this deliberative process, particularly when we're talking about a body, as I said, that will be quasi-adjudicating ethics violations. This could have implications for individuals' employment. Could have implications for fines and penalties, maybe. Things of this nature. It's a very important duty and responsibility that this commission has. So I'll look forward to listening going forward. I know you maybe looked with a perplexed look, Madam Chair. I'll go back in and see, too, if what I thought as I read this in the public hearing, that there is some seeking of financial autonomy here. I think if we go to the record, that was on the record when the public hearing, and it should be part of the committee report, that there was a non-transfer or the capability, albeit maybe $300,000, $400,000, sounds small in the grand scheme of the government's budget. But to say that this is absolute nonetheless is something that I think this body's tried to do for other functions unsuccessfully. And so I will say that if that maintains to be contained in here, I wouldn't be surprised if even the chief executive had a little trouble with that, just simply because even if you have to move $10, you have to move $10. Sidus Masi, Madam Chair, and I look forward to the continued debate on this very important measure, and I'm encouraged on what I've heard so far and its intent. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi. On the bill, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Sus Masi, Madam Speaker. I do have a question for the author of the bill. For the substitute bill, there has been a change that perhaps might limit the scope of the Ethics Commission compared to what is required of ethics training, for the law that we just passed. Currently in the substitute version, in section 15407, it states what the executive director of the Ethics Commission, what the role of that director has. It states currently in the substitute bill that they shall administer the public officers and employees laws pursuant to Chapter 15 Standard of Conduct Title 4 Guam Code annotated. In the original bill, I could see why they tried to limit it, because in the original bill it said administer all the laws of Guam, which needed to be restricted a little bit. But I think for this particular substitute bill, it may restrict it too much. And in seeing the list of areas that ethics training covers, so currently in this statute, Title 4, Chapter 15, it covers financial interests, it covers employee conduct, but I'm not quite certain that it can cover matters relating to, let me pull up the list here. Open government law, for one. So I'm not so sure if it catches everything. So I think maybe this is a question for the author. If it does, if you can verify if the language that's been provided in the substitute version is a catch-all for everything that is listed in the ethics training.
Sorry, are you asking the senator to yield? Would you yield to the question, Senator?
Yeah, Madam Speaker, if we can take a 1-minute recess, and I will get with legal on that question.
All right,
All right?
1 minute recess. We're back in session, back from recess. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, we've had the author of the question, we've had consultation with legal, and maybe the author of the question may want to speak to that now, the results of it.
All right. Thank you. Senator Perez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So yeah, in consulting with legal, my understanding is that it covers the jurisdiction of Ethics Commission, and to expand it to all the topics in the ethics training would require an additional law to expand the jurisdiction to cover those other parts. So that's my understanding. So yeah, currently it's sufficient as is.
On the bill, Senator Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have another question. In the bill, it states that the executive director is an unclassified position, but it's silent about whether the employees that this person hires is classified or unclassified. So I would like to proffer a question to the author of the bill to see what was the intent if the employees that were hired under the executive director were meant to be classified or unclassified.
Would the sponsor yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. To that question, I would leave it to the commission to determine, because the executive director is going to be unclassified. I would hope the commission would continue in that fashion for the purpose of removing bias. Similar to the Guam Legislature Commission, everybody's unclassified there. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Perez, you still have the floor.
Maybe a follow-up question. So then by being silent about whether it's classified or unclassified, then we're leaving it up to the director to determine if it's a classified position or not. And that can vary from executive director to executive director, which might create more, it could be problematic, I would think. Maybe if I can have one quick recess to discuss.
All right, 1 minute recess. We're back from recess and consultation with legal. Senator Perez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that recess. And in consultation with the legal, my understanding was that, so the Ethics Commission, by law, they're not identified as being unclassified, so all employees are classified employees. And I guess the policy that we have to decide is whether we want to keep them classified or not. And I guess the argument for classified employees would ensure perhaps some political protection as well as institutional law, retainment of institutional knowledge. And so I'm glad that was clarified with legal. And I have no amendments to make in that point. But I do have another question regarding autonomy. And in the bill itself, it states that the Ethics Commission is autonomous. And I think it's important for the Ethics Commission to be independent and have their own power to be able to administer the ethics laws, right? But in GCA, the definition of autonomous agency states that it's any department, agency, or instrumentality which generates or is intended to generate, as evidence in law, all of its operating revenues apart from annual appropriations from the general fund. So I do question the use of the word autonomous, because it doesn't follow the definition that's in GCA statute. Unless there's something that is proffered to show the intention of true autonomy, which is revenue generating, I guess I would like to proffer the amendment to strike autonomous from the bill without having it written down. So I'd like to proffer that amendment to strike autonomous until such time that there is something, a revenue source that's identified.
Could you cite where that word is? Page 2, line 4, that one?
To look for it, but it's, in the very first
All right.
part of the bill.
Page 2, line 4, the word autonomous. Is this amendment in writing?
No, it is not.
All right. Is there any objection to considering this amendment without it being in writing? It's to remove the word autonomous. No objection. Please proceed.
So yes, I would like to proffer that amendment, being that it's not in line with the definition in the statute until such time there is a source.
All right. On the amendment, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? Senator Torres, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I object to the amendment because in looking at the plain definition of autonomous, autonomous is having the freedom to govern itself or control its own affairs. It's also acting in accordance with one's moral duty rather than one's desires. So I think that the use of the word autonomous is exactly in line with what the author of the measure, the bill, contemplates with the Ethics Commission, that it in fact has to be free to govern itself, free to apply itself in its decisions and investigations in an independent, morally driven, rather than personal vendetta or personal ambition concept. So I think autonomous is appropriate in the pure sense of what autonomous means. And I believe that it more than adequately fits the purpose of this bill and should remain. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment. If there's no one else, on the amendment, Senator San Augustine.
Madam Speaker, I just want to be consistent with my colleague that just spoke before, just recently. I don't see any problem with them being autonomous, and it also states and independent. I like to stay focused on that. I want to make sure that they are autonomous, and when we're dealing with the budget, we, as this body, will decide the Budget Act on everything, on what money, how much funds they get to hire whoever they want to hire. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, Senator Perez, you're welcome to close on the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, I don't think anybody disagrees that we want the Ethics Commission to be able to administer all the laws that pertains to ethics independently. And I think that with the construction of the Ethics Commission itself, it's a board that's nominated. And I know that's been stated that there's potential upgrades to how the Ethics Commission will be selected. And, to have true autonomy, I think to hold it, have them elected officials, I think that is, one way to establish the autonomy. And, really the point that I'm making is, rather than give it a name, let's give it the teeth. And to give the word autonomy should have teeth to it. Yes, it states in the bill that they're independent, but, again, they don't have a revenue source. They're not elected officials. They're appointed officials. They don't have authority to procure, too. So, if we see other agencies that are autonomous, they have that ability to exercise that sort of independence and autonomy. But yes, I mean, to the point of we would like the Ethics Commission to have that. That's, I think we all agree with that. It's just giving them the teeth behind it. And so that is the point of this, this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment, is there any objection to the amendment? There's an objection, so all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. Senator Perez, you still have the floor on the bill.
Yeah, I don't have further questions, but I would like to support the Ethics Commission. As you can see that, they're trying to develop their own structure and, provide really the backbone to what we desire in our government to, basically have best practices within our government system. So I am full support of that. I do think that there's some things that still need to be worked out with this legislation, and we do hear some some other bills coming through the pipe that might give this body a little bit more autonomy that we desire. So thank you.
Thank you. On the bill, Senator Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do support the bill, and I agree with the Commission that they should appoint the executive director rather than having the governor do so. Even though, really, we know the governor still appoints the commission, but for now, at least, it's just a start. So I don't think this bill is as strong as it could be. It's not 100% independent. In order to have that, the Ethics Commission, especially when the governor appoints the commission themselves, but it's a start. But to be 105% independent, eventually we should look at that being an elected position. But I do support the measure, and I want to ask the sponsor of the bill to be a co-sponsor on the measure. But I do hope that the next time we discuss the Ethics Commission, it regards having them to be an elected position for the people, and I'll support that 105%. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Senator Brown, you're recognized on the bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I did want to ask the sponsor of this bill just to inquire with regards to the executive director and the amount of votes that are needed to remove an executive director. I mean, I understand, wanting to have this individual. Certainly, I hope they're the most perfect person on Guam, but if for whatever reason the commission itself determines that they no longer want to keep the executive director in terms of their performance, why do we have and require 5 members to remove them versus a simple majority? I mean, I see how we continue in government to try and slant the process by requiring more votes than simple majority. So I wanted to inquire, why do we have 5 versus 4? I mean, if there's 7 members of the commission, I mean, 4 to me is a substantial amount of board members. It's a majority of board members to determine that the executive director that they may have hired or have under their supervision for whatever reason is not meeting their expectations of service. Why don't we simply have simple majority? Because what we don't want to do is create an individual also that really, becomes more in charge than the commission itself, because you need more than a simple majority to remove them for whatever reason. I mean, we've seen that in the history. We've seen it in the past, how some people in certain positions can abuse that. And I think it's important to say, simply have a simple majority. So I just wanted to ask the sponsor of the bill if he can, relay as to why he wants 5 members out of a commission of 7 to determine that an executive director should be removed from their service if the executive director works for the commission. Why can't a simple majority remove that executive director for whatever reason? I mean, we've seen in cases in the government where individuals that have been put in positions for whatever reason don't fulfill their responsibilities of obligation. I mean, we most recently saw that with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So why would we want to insulate them almost to the point that we need a supermajority to remove them if they're not performing their services as desired by the commission?
Would the sponsor like to yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. For number 1, you need 5 to entertain ethics complaint. Number 2, another commission that applies the same rule is the Guam Election Commission. They follow the same concept. So unless you wanted to change it to be less or more specific, I was just trying to be consistent with what's going on
No,
today.
I understand. I just think some of these things simply, as it does in here, I mean, in the body of the legislature, unless we're going to override a bill, voting on it simply requires a majority of the members present. And I don't know whatever future circumstance may happen with the executive director or future board, but I just don't think it should be complicated for a board to decide that the executive director that's working for them, is or is not meeting their expectations. And if that individual is not meeting their expectations, then why can't they, by a simple majority of 4, remove them if they choose to? I don't want to get to the position that people in government become, isolated to the point that they're untouchable. Because I think it's always important to have a balance, because there's always a potential for individuals, including a possible executive director, to abuse their position. Sometimes we get too important for ourselves. So with that, if the sponsor doesn't have a problem, I would like to amend it just a simple 4, which is the majority of the 7 present, and amend from 5 to 4. That's on page 4, line 3. I don't have it in writing, Madam Speaker, but it's a minor,
All right.
minor change from 5 to 4.
On the motion to, notwithstanding the rules, consider this amendment without it being in writing, is there any objection to that? It would be to change the number 5 to 4. No objection. So the amendment now is to change the number 5 on line 3, page 4, to the number 4. On that amendment, is there anyone who'd like to speak? Senator San Agustin.
Madam Speaker, the amendment is to change it from 5 to 4. I have a different of opinion when it comes to when we talk about the body. Required majority. Whenever we make amendments, it requires 8. When it requires to override a veto, you require 2/3. So I'm just trying to be very careful. I will just stick to what I have on the bill. And unless the body, votes in favor of it, I will stick with my 5. Thank you. So I do object.
All right. On the amendment, anyone else who would like to speak on the amendment? If not, Senator Brown, you're welcome to close on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I mean, the intent is really just to balance the process. I mean, we have a vote of 8, yes, because 8 is it's a majority of 15, if we're going to divide it up. I just think there needs to be some fairness in this process. I think in government we've had a tendency to slant the votes that make it difficult for the simple majority of decisions to be made. And I think there needs to be a balance in that process. To restrain the commission of 7 to say that they need 5 members to remove an individual that has been tasked to work for them, I think it makes it more difficult. Why does it need to be more difficult? You might argue at the other end, oh, well, then if the executive director raises issues that the commission doesn't like, it's easy for them to remove that individual. But at the same time, that's the role of the commission. It's really the commission ultimately that's going to review these cases and make a decision. They should have the ability to remove an individual by simple majority if that individual's not performing. I mean, unclassified employees in government of Guam are removed by the simple decision of one individual. One individual. Be it here at the legislature, or be it in the executive. So I just simply want a balance in the process and not make it so difficult and so complicated. It's wonderful if an individual's performing well, then it's a non-issue. But if they're not, I simply think the commission by a vote of majority should be able to remove them. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment, it's to change the number 5 on page 4, line 3, to the number 4. There's been an objection, so all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment passes. On the bill, Senator Brown, you still have the floor. All right. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the bill? On the bill? On the bill, Senator Tagtagui, you have the floor.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity, and good afternoon to my colleagues. Madam Speaker, there are quite a few questions I had with regards to the makeup of the Ethics Commission. And one of them first, the autonomous, which was addressed earlier, and, I've looked at the definition as well, and there really is no need to have the word autonomous in here if you follow what's in Guam Code annotated. And you look at the makeup of the members and how they're appointed, it still brings question to many people. An average person will tell you, well, how can you have individuals that are appointed by a governor, and when there's an ethics complaint that comes up in front of these appointed individuals by the governor, when the ethics has to do with like a government agency or a director? I mean, it just does not feel right. It's very simple. Anybody can tell you that there might be some issues with that. One thing I did appreciate in this legislation was the fact that the individuals that are going to be hired through the executive director, and I believe there's an amendment coming up with the concurrence of the commission as the board members as well, in order to hire anybody, that they become classified individuals. And it was mentioned too, the importance of institutional knowledge, as well as no pressure, on these individuals who are also providing information, critical information that can make or break an individual. An example, Madam Speaker, is if one of these classified employees finds something unethical within the commission itself, needs to come forward without any fear. We talk about all the outside influence. What I'm concerned is about the inside influence of this ethics committee. Nobody's perfect, granted that. But I think it's important too that we keep a strong eye on these individuals. I mean, already the question on how much the executive director is making is very, actually disturbing to me. How did he come up with $78,000 a year salary with almost $103,000 after benefits? Who made that decision? And I feel comfortable enough to know that, okay, bringing this up first, But I feel comfortable enough to know that this body still has the authority when it comes to budgets. And we can even itemize that. And if they want to use their funding that we provide for them on salaries rather than research, data information, then we're just going to have them bite the bullet here and make a decision. This ethics committee is long, long overdue. We all know that. We're trying to get it up and running and do it fairly for everyone. There's also legislation that may come up later on to provide more duties to this ethics committee, which I think is needed. You know, it's important, Madam Speaker, that people become more proactive than reactive. And I'm hoping that this ethics committee does just that. And I stand in full support of this ethics committee and the changes that are made today, though some of them I, did not pass and I agreed with regarding like an autonomous to be removed but all in all, this is a good bill. And I'm sure that there are going to be bills, additional bills coming forward, to strengthen this ethics board. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this legislation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator, on the bill? Vice Speaker?
Speaker Talahi, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you very much. I think one thing that we can all agree on in here is that any bill that's going to help our Ethics Commission, which has never operated before, become independent is good. We want independent decisions by our ethics prosecutors. We want them not to be under the influence of anyone, even those who've appointed them, those who fund them, those who, hire them in other capacities. We don't want that influence in our Ethics Commission. And so, of course, I love the title of the bill, relative to reaffirming the independence of the Guam Ethics Commission. And I want to do that. But I do have a couple issues with the bill, and I just want to put these on the record. I agree with those who spoke before me regarding an autonomy. Fiscal autonomy. Autonomous is defined in our code to be an agency, an autonomous agency, is one who generates revenue and thus is fiscally independent and autonomous from relying on the general fund. Of course, we have anomalies like the GMH. It's supposed to be autonomous, but we all know that it relies on the general fund as well. But I hope that we are not trying to make our Ethics Commission a revenue-generating commission by any means, even though we have allowed them now to charge for ethics courses and that we have mandated those courses across the government. So they will be receiving revenue, but I don't know how much that's going to generate at this point, and I just hope that they do not become obsessed with money, because that's the last thing I want the Ethics Commission to worry about. And I think in their testimony on this bill, they were very clear about what they wanted, and they wanted to be fiscally autonomous, meaning they wanted to be exempt from BBMR's control, for example, budget caps, They don't want to be under that regime where we've seen agencies come in and say, we need more than this, but we've been given a cap by BBMR. They don't want that, so they want the authority to submit their own budget request, independent. That was one of their 5 points. That's unfortunately not in this bill. Oh, well, let me double check. That's right. And they want it to be exempt from that reservation of funds, appropriated funds that BBMR makes on its line agencies. It holds back sometimes 5, 10% of the appropriations from agencies, just in case. And so this agency, which was given $190,000 last year, I think, they don't want that reserve. They need all of that money, they say, and they want to be able to spend every dime of it. They also want to be exempt from BBMR's allotment control, meaning they release the money as they see fit based on cash. And we have given this authority, resides of DOA and BBMR, and we've seen many agencies come in here and they have issue with their allotment, their appropriation, their budgeted amount being held back because it interferes with their operations. So I understand that, and I think that's where they want to be patterned after the Guam Election Commission. So we recently authorized that the Election Commission would be exempt from all of that as well, so that what we give them, nobody's going to hold back if they don't like a decision that the Election Commission made, if they don't like a decision that the Ethics Commission makes, that no one's going to interfere with the allotment that they're supposed to get. But I think they very fully understood that they need legislative approval of the funds in the first place. So it's really not necessarily, they will never, they're not independent in that fashion. Every one of the 7 members is appointed by the governor. We had an ethics commission prior to this. This was amended in the 27th Guam Legislature. Prior to that, there were supposed to be members appointed by the courts, members appointed by the legislature, and members appointed by the governor. And that was how they were going to try to make it, more independent or more, not just appointed by one person. But the courts refused to appoint back then, saying it was an interference with different powers or a conflict. And so this was, because of no appointments, it became this, the commission itself, or the law, became defunct and had to be revived again by the 27th. And this is, the new composition was all appointment by the governor. And it's hard to get around that, so I don't really object to that, but I do think we should recognize that nothing in this bill is changing that every single one of the members is appointed by the governor. And nothing in this bill is changing what happens when the Ethics Commission makes a decision. It's still a decision as to whether there was some kind of violation of an ethics duty. That decision is going to be a recommendation from the commission going back to the director of an agency. Or if they think it's a criminal matter, they're going to send it to the Attorney General. So I don't know, when I kept looking at that statute over and over, it's difficult because I feel like that's a long way around, I guess I'm imagining it's useful if a director is not acting in the first place. And it's useful if the Attorney General is not acting in the first place on something that constitutes a crime. So of course we want some other body that can bring that to the attention of the public again, right? So, but otherwise, we should have directors who are going to act on these things immediately, and especially prosecutors. But my biggest concern with the bill is really just that, the title says we're reaffirming the independence of the Ethics Commission, but the meat of the bill is doing something, to me, totally different. It is putting in statute what the executive director of the commission is going to do. And there's been a lot of comparison between this Ethics Commission and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and I think we should learn from that. So for example, if you look on page 3, subsection B2, line 15, this says that the director is going to perform all of the powers, duties, purposes, functions, and jurisdiction vested in the commission in accordance with the rules of the commission and subject to the right of appeal to the commission. I don't know if you remember, a few years ago when the whole fiasco exploded at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, that was because they had delegated their duty to these directors over many, many years to do things that the commission should have been deliberating on and making decisions and making policy decisions itself. And so they've revamped since then, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. And that's why I objected a month ago when they were trying to consider a resolution to go back again to delegating these duties to the director. And so, this language it's more palatable because it has the words, in accordance with the rules of the commission and subject to the right of appeal to the commission. But I just feel like, why put it in there? Why put that in there in statute? And why don't we just let this commission do its duty? It's really on them. It's their decision whether they even hire a director at all. I don't want to mandate that they hire one. It's up to them if that's how they decide to spend their money or if they would rather spend their money on something else. A hearings officer, I don't know what they're going to need, but, or if they even need any money at all, it's a commission and they're supposed to be making determinations as to whether there's been ethics violations or not. I don't want the commission's deliberations to be delegated. But that was my concern with this statute. But because it says in accordance with the rules of the commission and subject to the right of appeal, I don't know. I'm going to move on from there. Just want to put that on the record. The other thing is, if you look on page 4, subsection C1, it says, the executive director is authorized to hire and terminate staff. Again, if you go back to page 3, line 6, subsection A, that shows you the existing statute. Under existing law, the Guam Ethics Commission, the commission may employ persons it deems necessary for the performance of its duties, including an executive director and all the staff. And I don't want to remove the commission's authority to do that. It should be them. And again, we haven't seen this commission operate yet, except to hire an executive director. And so, we're gonna be flexible as we move along. But I just think I would delete this section. And I saw that the sponsor has an amendment to this section. I think I uploaded an amendment to delete it, but I will yield to his amendment to this section. But again, my concern is, why are we putting these things in statute regarding hiring, almost mandating that this agency is going to grow, into a, I don't know if I should say this, but like always needing money agency, as opposed to a decision-making body as to whether somebody violated the ethics laws. I don't know. I don't think that was the original intent, that they would, be operating with a huge budget. And if you look at, I'm at the Ethics Commission's testimony on the bill. They asked for 5 things. None of them are in the bill, unfortunately. And I have no objection to what they ask for. But I have objection to these things, all this stuff about hiring, doesn't give them the autonomy. It gives them just the ability to consume expenditures of the government. I want to give them this. They want to be able to submit their own budget. That's number one. Number two, they want to, that the commission approves its own budget. That the director submits the budget to the legislature with a breakdown, and it kind of details what they're going to include in their budget. That the budgetary appropriation shall be exempt from BBMR allotment control. And 5, that the commission may draw against their respective appropriations as needed to meet their obligations and the drawdown schedule and all of that, so that there's no whim being imposed on this commission, you know, when someone doesn't like the decision that it makes. So just wanted to put those on the record. And with all due respect, I mean, I love the title of the bill. I love that we want to make them independent, but I just feel like I don't want to go out of control of the hiring in this agency. I want to give them what they want, and that's fiscal independence from budgetary control. Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, I understand it's on the Google Drive, and so
I'm going to yield to the sponsor on his amendment on the same section, so I will
I'll go ahead. Thank you, Speaker Terlahi. I'll go ahead and yield to the author. But do you want to yield as
No, I mean, I'm going to withdraw that amendment, and I'll yield. The sponsor has a similar amendment on the same section.
I was just going to ask Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Before I allow the main author to speak on the proposed amendment and closing, is there anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Joseph Augustine, I'll give you the opportunity to make your amendment and then to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleagues, if you would go to the drive, you'll find that the amendment is for lines 6 to 7, lines 6 to 7, page 4, which basically puts in before the word the executive director with
Senator
consent.
San Augustine, if you can just give me a minute, because there was a formal motion to withdraw. I'm going to ask the body to acknowledge that. On the motion to withdraw based on Speaker Therese Terlahi, for the record, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator San Augustine, on your proposed amendment.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a continuation. On page 4, lines 6 to 7, insert the word with, or words, with consent of the Guam Legislature Commission, the executive director is authorized to hire.
Does everybody have that? That's on the Google Drive. Anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? If not, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator San Augustine, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I can move to close now?
Yes, sir, you can.
All right,
Oh,
thank
I
you.
do apologize. One moment, please. Majority Leader, I apologize. I heard your hand was raised. I will address you at this time.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Can I just get a quick recess? I have some amendments that I'd like to proffer. We're still working on them right now.
We will be in a moment's recess. Imina 86 na legislature in Guahan is back from recess. Majority Leader, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can we just recess and come back at 2:30?
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries.